this week, moving on to, just take this down a bit, moving on to the floor. And what I would advise anybody to do if they're going to put in insulation in their floor, like I've done here, is measure out your kind of matrix. I've basically gone with a sort of a 4x3 kind of configuration. That gives me a kind of insulation board length and depth of about 18 to 20 inches by 18 to 20. Some are a bit smaller, some are a bit bigger, and there's obviously over at the back they're going to be all sorts of funny sizes and shapes, as is the around the wheel wells. Now I would really advise anybody who's going to do this and do as I've done here and lay it out. Just pull back, lay it out a little bit, and get a good idea of all of the nooks and crannies. I did this about 3 or 4 times before I found the kind of optimal way that I could get maximum coverage of insulation while providing a really good kind of base for the floor. Most of the noggins pieces over here in between have been strategically kind of placed for furniture to be able to screw in. Same here at the back, at the front, and likewise at the back. For example, the ribs on my van are not uniform across at all, and there's spaces where the ribs kind of run out, and then they just, you've just kind of got these blank spaces. So at the end of some of the rib runs, like here for example, is a good run that just runs out and it's completely flat. So I've made out some small little shims that I'm also going to glue in place just to add a little bit more rigidity. As you can see, this is pretty much a frame. I've also had to make some, you see there I've glued 2 pieces of batten together so that I can actually, in this piece here where the rib isn't the same depth as these ribs, it's actually flat, so I've had to glue 2 pieces together to provide a piece of batten at the front which is more or less within a very small margin, same depth. Another quick tip that I would do would be to cut out a square of your insulation board. I've just done one there which is about 20 inches by about 18 inches, just to make sure that it fits in nice and snugly, obviously into your areas, just to make sure that you're going to be able to tape that down nicely and that it's not raised too much. I've got a couple of the battens where the van floor is a bit uneven that I've had to sort of just shim down slightly to make sure that is the case. So I just kind of go around with each one of those and I just place it in each one just to make sure that it's going to be okay just before I glue in it. Again, as you can see there, really good example. I've got this little shim that I will glue in place, and again that's because of the way the van goes. I've got the ribs there, as you can see, and they're nothing, completely bare. And what happens is when you put that in, of course, is you get some movement in the corner. And what I'm going to do is put a couple of little shims, just one in each corner, one there, glue them in, and then that fits like an absolute glove. So then with the base floor kind of marked out, this just incidentally is 25mm, so effectively an inch batten to go with the 25mm, or just under or just over in some areas of the Kingspan insulation board. And then over the top of that I'll be putting more of the Reflectix, taping that down, and on top of that will be the plywood flooring. So now I've got that done, and I'm reasonably happy with the layout. I've got a couple more shims to do over there, look, by the door, sort of in that area, a couple of shims over there, a couple of shims to measure up in here to make that more of a frame so that it really doesn't move, so that when I glue it down it's really going to be in there and provide as much support as possible. As I've mentioned before, obviously this is going to lose an inch off of the height of the van. A couple of reasons I'm okay with that. Number one is because obviously, of course, we've got the pop top roof, and number two, really because we've got the pop top roof, I want to provide as much insulation as possible elsewhere on the van. And of course the other reason is because I've not had to do insulation on the roof. Then I'm really not losing anything. Most people would do insulation on the roof on the basis that that's where they would lose most of their heat. I've not done that, so I'm just going to put as much insulation on the floor and provide a really good sturdy floor, also to bolt down furniture as good as possible. So that's really my thoughts on that. We'll be using the van all year round, so again, you know, going for as much insulation as possible. And to be honest, you know, if there's an inch sacrifice, I'm happy to go with that, knowing that we've put in as much insulation as we can to make it as comfortable and as usable as possible. So with that in, it's time to start gluing them down. Okay guys, so you can see now that I've finished bonding down the framework for the new floor. As you can see, in various places I've strategically placed additional over there, additional kind of noggin pieces, just to provide a little bit more support for the floor in high use areas. Here you can see again, extra, I haven't glued these ones in yet, I'll do these as I go, just for where there's going to be furniture. That's where the kind of front end of the kitchen and any units do over the other side now. The layout that I've got in mind at the moment is to have the kitchen here with maybe a slimline unit over there, but I wanted to build in as much flexibility for future use as possible. One of the couple of key things around the build of this, the bond I've used is one of the instant grip type bonds. I'm just trying to see if you can see it here. Now it's not like a lot of the rigid glues. I didn't want to put down a completely rigid glue that may crack or come loose over time, because clearly the bottom of the van is anything but square and it's quite uneven in places. I wanted there to be some flexibility, so all of these kind of Evo stick or the Gorilla stuff or any of the kind of instant grab kind of bonds all have either a silicone or a rubberized element in them, which does give a certain amount of give. As you can see, this has been in for a couple of days, but I can quite happily sort of peel a piece of that away. It's got a certain amount of give with almost like a rubber quality to it. So that should give the floor enough kind of movement, both in transport and once the floor's loaded. So that's quite important. So now it's time to fill in the gaps with the insulation board.